20 ounce beer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we can only do 16.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Redmond.
Here.
Councilmember Collins.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Stacklet.
Here.
Mayor Klur.
Here. And at this time, we would like to open it up to public comment. Anyone in the audience wish to speak? Anyone online? All right, we will close public comment and move on to council and staff comments. Todd, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So wanted to give an update on a couple of projects that we've talked about in here. Redesign of McLeod Avenue, the daylighting of Castle Creek, and the idea of one-ways on Chestnut and North Mount Shasta Boulevard. They're all in process of, of being looked at, and then preliminary design. There just have been some illnesses at pace, and so that's why they're a little bit behind. But in process. The next is I finally have a meeting set with the county administrator to meet with Cosmont, our consultant, on a potential partnership on an enhanced infrastructure finance district, and that will take place on the 30th. And there is one more thing that was on the agenda, and that is coming back with an estimate for clearing fuels from the landing and from the orchard property. And because of snow, we haven't been able to do it, but the chief was out today with a couple consultants, and so we'll have estimates for the next meeting.
Council? I have a couple small announcements. One is to apologize to everyone that received an email from me that was hacked over the last week. It was a fun Wednesday when I received lots of calls asking when and where I wanted people to meet me for Apple gift cards. I quickly found out that I had been hacked, so sorry about that if you received one of those. And I was approached by a production company working with Netflix that is wanting to do a docuseries based in Mount Shasta. So they're wanting to film here in the next month. And we're asking some questions about lodging and that kind of thing. So you might see some filming crews. I think they're coming the week of February 13th. So fun stuff. And moving on to number 6, committee updates. Anything there?
No committee updates.
All right, 7, consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, January 9th, 2023, regular and special city council meetings. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable 1/4, 1/12, and 1/13, 2023, total gross payroll and taxes for period ending 1/8/23. C, approval of expenditure for Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee logo.
Move to approve consent agenda items A through C by title only.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And number 8, the first reading of ordinance CCO-22, an ordinance of the City Council for the City of Mount Shasta adopting Chapter 5.50 short-term rentals. This is do you want to take this off, Todd?
Yeah, I've got a couple comments before we begin that might speed things up. There was a constituent comment So let me back up. In our discussions up to this point, there have been a total in our, our research, 60 total short-term rentals, with 19 being in residential areas and the rest being in the 25, short-term rentals being 44, with 19 in residential areas and with 25 units in commercial zones. And it was brought to our attention after various conversations and this constituent comment that actually there is one or two addresses that have 2 short-term rentals at them. So that brings the total of short-term rental units in commercial zones from 25 to 27. So that brings the total number of short-term rentals from 44 to 46. And so when we get into the discussion about a cap, a percentage cap in commercial zones, if that stands, we talked last time about there being 12 additional slots available in commercial zones for short-term rentals. Because of those 2 additional units, it would drop to 10. And there's one other item of housekeeping that Councilman Collins brought up to me today under 5.50.40C is it states that there would be a 1% cap in residential zones. And, it wasn't brought up expressly, but it was clear from the discussion that we wanted to freeze the number of short-term short-term rental units in residential zones. So I think we should strike the language in this section about a 1% cap in residential zones and phrase it something to the effect of short-term rentals in residential zones shall be capped at the current number 19, and leave it at that. So just a bit of housekeeping that may allow us to move a little more quickly through this.
Any questions? Go ahead.
City Manager, do you know if there is any language, even necessary, in the code directing the manner in which short-term rentals are counted as units versus registrations?
Yes, I changed the terminology under 5.50.40, the first sentence, I changed it to unit. So, the idea being in this that from now on, instead of, we've been calling them short-term rental licenses, but in this ordinance, they're called short-term rental permits. By changing it to unit, we're counting all the short-term rental that we have out there, whether they're at the same property or not, as units. So if you've got 2 short-term rentals on the same property, you need a short-term rental for both, you need a permit for both of those short-term rentals on your property.
Thank you.
And going back to 55040C, we might clarify that to make reference to the existing 19 short-term rental licenses or permits, and their successors in interest, because just saying that there's a total of 19 doesn't indicate if somebody who has a license decides no longer to operate a short-term rental, and it doesn't get purchased by someone else who wants to have a short-term rental, basically that number would decrease. That permit would no longer exist.
So I made this section short, as I stated. Short-term rentals in residential zones shall be capped at the current number 19. And in the rest of the ordinance itself, it talks about when a property changes hands and the new buyer, has a choice of coming in and first dibs at getting, a continuance on that, getting a new short-term rental permit for that location. If they failed to do so within a month, then, then that's one less short-term rental that's on the as part of our inventory.
I'd ask that the legislative record, in terms of the minutes, reflect that clearly, so that if the issue comes up in some future year, there will be a clear record
Noted.
of intent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we can open up for public comment. Anyone in the audience wish to speak? Anyone online?
Our first speaker will be Peggy Risch.
All right, Peggy, begin when ready.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank the council members and Todd for the clarifications. That pretty much addresses my most recent comments. So thank you for that. I also want to thank you for your continued due diligence here in getting this ordinance done. So I guess my one comment at this point in the process is to just really encourage that our city's municipal code on bed and breakfast and inns really gets prioritized to get cleaned up and eliminate the loopholes. And I say this since in one of the first readings, it was determined that bed and breakfast inns were not going to be part of this ordinance. So basically, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Anyone else?
Our next speaker will be Johanna.
Hello, Johanna, begin when ready.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, thank you all for all of this clarification. I did have one piece that I wasn't clear on. In the residential, as they drop off, do we also need to state that if existing units drop off and they're not renewed within the 30 days, Todd mentioned that those units will not be replaced, so that there's not a continued 19 cap going forward if these particular properties drop off, so that those 19 licenses stayed with just these existing properties and potentially with different owners if they apply within the 30 days. But if they don't apply within the 30 days, then that license goes down and we go down to 18, 17, 16, and so forth as properties no longer renew the license. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was also kind of what Peggy touched on, which was the B&Bs. I was always hoping from the beginning that we would include B&Bs in the STR definition, with the caveat of a few extra particulars like someone on site and some of the particulars to B&Bs. But I still think a B&B is a form of an STR, and it seems like would have been nice to have been included in this. But if it's not, then I would like to also ask that it's very quickly addressed so that we don't have other situations occur. Anyway, that was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Johanna.
No other commenters.
Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to discussion.
we move the draft ordinance with the tonight's amendments to a second reading. I would also ask that, I'd also move that the intent as to, was it 55040C be specifically included in the minutes of this meeting.
All those in favor?
Yes, by title only. Thank you, Kelly.
Still a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Number 9, discussion possible action, renewal of 22 Avenue contract for hybrid meetings. Todd, would you like to explain this one?
Yes. So, let me get my notes up here. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so Avenue 22 has been with us for the past year, and they're coming up at a decision point whether the city decides to renew their services for another year. The proposed amount for 3 meetings per month is here, let me just use my calculator here. Is for $36,900. You'll see in the packet that it's $41,000. I'm including their flat rate fee of $650 for an additional 8 meetings that I don't think we'll use, which is cheaper than it was last year. I would remind folks that we didn't use our 3 meetings per month just because the Planning Commission didn't meet as regularly as we typically would. So I would imagine that we would be much closer to the $36,900 for the year, and it all comes down to we're not required by any urgency ordinance by the state of California anymore to conduct hybrid meetings, but I know that members of the community, especially since our community skews older, I really appreciate the ability to join remotely, but after that intro, I'm going to leave it up to council to decide whether or not this is a good idea.
Questions?
City Manager, and maybe Muriel, I'm not sure who I should direct this to, but we got meetings done with people able to view them or contact us remotely via telephone for decades before COVID. In this facility, people wheeled things in. It was put up online if you wanted to watch it later. These facilities existed. And it's not that I haven't loved having all these facilities here. My question would be, do we have how much does that cost? Even if stuff needs to be upgraded, if it does, I don't know, to be honest. But it's just a function of, given that we're $500,000 in the hole underwater this year, and that will likely continue to lesser numbers, do we want to spend $40,000-ish on something that is really nice to have? And as far as I know, and my question is, I don't think we need to have that because we do have an option, but, so my question is, do we? Do we have an option to do it like we used to do, where rolled in the rack and that's how it used to be? Can we go back to that?
Kathy, do you feel comfortable weighing in on this?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I would not anticipate that we will be able to utilize the equipment that we used before. It hasn't been used since early 2020. I don't know if you recall the big soundboard that we would wheel in, and then we had a PC that we would use to stream to the public and record it so people could watch it later. I would anticipate that that equipment has become obsolete by this time. I would recommend, if you choose not to renew the contract, we're still going to need to put out an RFP for somebody to be able to design a system that we will be able to utilize here in order to stream. We will still need to stream and record the meetings.
Is there some, follow-up question, if I may? I was in the music manufacturing business, so I understand the hardware, and it may be obsolete, but then people say I am too. I'm still working. Have we tried it? I mean, do we know what we're, it's, I'm just a little hesitant, or at least motivated to look at options to not write a $40,000 check when a whole lot less than that might work just fine. I just would like to know. That's all. And if you don't know now, that's okay. But I would like to know.
Sure. I certainly understand where you're coming from. One of the things is that the platform that we utilized back in 2020 in order to stream and record our programs we don't utilize it any longer. We don't have a subscription for that service, so that's something that would have to be established. Additionally, I'd like to remind you that a lot of our folks, our consultants, do attend hybrid. For example, Kyle, our contract planner, attends the meetings in a hybrid format through Zoom, and he won't be able to attend in person if we don't have the system set up.
Help me understand something. For instance, Kyle. Would Kyle not, as people were able to before, once the meeting, which was recorded and put up online, wouldn't he be able to review it the next day or 2 or 3 later?
He may be able to review the meeting, but he wouldn't be able to attend. And he would be needed to attend planning commission meetings.
Yeah, I've been to all these meetings, and I've never seen him call in and ask any questions.
Kyle is our contract planner.
No, I understand.
He would need to be present to attend planning commission meetings in order to present staff reports and answer questions.
Oh, excuse me, planning commission meetings.
Right. It's not just council that does these hybrid meetings.
And Zoom's not an acceptable format over there?
Zoom is not something that we've been able to do ourselves without the assistance of 22Ave.
Yeah, I just gotta figure. So Kyle would have to get his backside in a car and drive up here for the 8 meetings we have.
And can I add something to this? So it's not just Kyle, it's the consultants that we've had call in, like Cosmont. It's Matrix Consulting. And I don't have a dog in this fight. My concern is when we have, for instance, Kyle is in Concord, California, and if you pay for him to drive up from the Bay Area to then present and then drive back or put him up overnight.
He's in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was in Redding.
No.
Never mind the drive-up comment.
And Cosmont's in LA.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, big question here. Are we sure we're going to run a $500,000 deficit? That's definite?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Are we sure we're going to run a $500,000 deficit? $500,000, I'll be positive. We haven't really seen many numbers, per se.
I just received the December bank statement today. So once December is reconciled, I will be doing the mid-year projections with the changes that have already been approved and other changes that I see will need tweaking or some sort of changes. The forecast that we had before, given the changes in salaries, which is the biggest change, we're going to be in a deficit of between $400,000 and $500,000 before I even actually look at it. That's my guess.
I have a questions, maybe comment. Since the contract isn't expiring until February 23rd and we haven't reviewed any financial data and we are doing kind of a budget review at that point, would it make more sense to move this to that meeting? I think it was the February 9th, I don't know about the date, but it was the first meeting in February that we were going to review the budget. Perhaps we have that as a line item at that point.
Sure.
Does that sound good to everyone?
All right, so I'll move to, you
I think we
still
still
have to do public
have to open up to
comment?
public comment, yeah.
Our first speaker will be Peggy Risch.
Okay, Peggy, begin when ready.
Sure. First of all, I'd just like to say that, I have actually appreciated the ability to use the service that allows me to sit here in my home and to make comments. I know that COVID is not a big issue as much, but seeing how my husband works in the hospital, it goes in waves in terms of not only COVID, but other respiratory illnesses that do affect more the senior population, and sometimes the waves that go through for children. So having this possibility keeps me safe, and I'm sure it works for other people as well. So my vote is that it would be great if we could continue this service. I think that the other things to consider besides what was brought up with the consultants and the processes going on, as you recall, a future draft of the housing element will become available. And as we know, there were over 100 comments that were submitted on that. And I imagine there would be greater public participation if that's hopefully is desirable, if there was the option for this format that we are using. So anyway, that's just my vote to continue with it. And thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Anyone else?
Our next speaker will be Johanna.
Okay, Johanna, begin when ready.
Hi there. So I have really enjoyed Zoom. It's been really nice to see different perspectives and different people join in, and it gives more people an opportunity. Most cities do offer hybrid meetings, and I totally agree with what Todd brought up about the cost for consultants driving up here. And also some of the speakers that we've had who've had presentations, they've been able to join via Zoom or via this service. And so I think that's great. And agree with Peggy's comment about the housing element and general plan coming up. And I also want to point out that besides Zoom, there are other options. Like Cisco has, I forget the name of what Cisco has, but they use a platform similar to Zoom that all corporations or many corporations use. And so that might be another option to consider that might be much more cost effective. Anyway, I think I sent an email on that a couple of years ago, but I could dig it out again. Anyway, I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Okay, we'll be closing public comment and back for a motion or discussion.
All right, I'll move to continue this item till February 23rd. Is that the appropriate date, Todd?
Or whatever that date is that we're... 13th.
13th to February 13th.
13th.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Item 10, discussion, possible action, adoption of business assistance loan grant program guidelines. Muriel, you want to head this one?
Sure, Mayor and Council. The CDBG program changes their guidelines very frequently. With that change and the changes that we have every time that this happens, we bring the guidelines to council for them to review and ask questions and approve, and for members of the public to weigh in on whatever CDBG programs that we have. In this case, there's been a change for our business assistance guidelines that now allows for loan forgiveness for people who have loans once the national objectives and standards and public benefit standards have been met, documented and verified, then the loan, where before they would have a repayment plan on, would now then be forgiven. So that's what's before you right now. It's an adoption of business assistance loan grant program guidelines for the CDBG, the 18 CDBG 12898 grant, which is the grant or the programs that we're operating right now.
And is the forgiveness a discretionary determination by the city after making some effort to obtain repayment of the loan?
Well, the guidelines state that for every $35,000 of loan that is given to a business, that they create one low-income job. So that low-income job would have to be documented and verified, and there's other standards as well. So once all of those standards have been documented and verified by Great Northern Services and approved through the city, then the loan would be forgiven. So it's basically making sure they're meeting the CDBG national and public benefits standards for the reason for getting the loan to begin with.
Muriel, just help me remember CDBG revolving strategy of a pot of money, loan it out, pay it back to the pot of money loans it back out again. Is that thinking correct?
Which creates program income, and I think what's happening over time is the program income part of the CDBG program is dwindling away.
Yeah, I mean, how would it continue to work over time because this would dwindle it down?
There just wouldn't be a program income type of program. What we do, for instance, is we would be applying for the things that we would be using program income for now. For instance, in the past, we've used it for our senior snow removal program. What we would do is, and what we have done, is we apply for a grant for senior snow removal outside of the program income arena. So it would be a public service type program that CDBG would look at and approve it in that way.
Thank you. I understand.
Come on up, Brandy.
Brandy from Great Northern Services is here, so if you have other questions, you can. She's the guru about this stuff and would be able to answer questions.
Yeah, and I'll just add, this is Jasmine. We've hired her also to assist in the program. With this program also, this allows us more latitude as well to offer different forms to expend funds within the business assistance grant. So we can do loans, we can do forgivable loans, and then we can also do grants. Currently, we're running up against a timeline deadline of September 2023 to expend funds. No one has applied for this grant application. It hit right in the beginning of COVID, so nobody wanted to take out loans. And still, people are still, now that we're diving into a recession, people are like, no loans. We do have several businesses that are established businesses that bring in tourists to the community that are willing to do a forgivable loan. Therefore, we could expend the grant funds instead of returning them to the state. But they don't want to take out another loan against their business. So it would not only be consolidating the loans that they already have from private industry, they would be purchasing other equipment as well.
Brandy, you did a good job, except I still don't entirely understand. When you talk about a forgivable loan, that sounds like a grant to me.
Technical terms, but yes. So a forgivable loan is they have to meet, a grant is you're just giving them money. Forgivable loan is they have to meet criteria after they receive the money. So if they don't meet those requirements of the loan, we can actually collect on that debt then. Whereas a grant, you usually can't.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll open up to public comment. And we will close public comment.
The public hearing, according to, I'm looking at the resolution here, and it looks like it is actually a public hearing rather than simply public comment. So you may want to open up for a public hearing.
Okay, we can open it up for public hearing and close public hearing. And back to council for discussion or motion.
I'll move to approve. Comments? No? Okay. Move to approve resolution CCR-23-01. New year. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta authorizing and approving an adoption of business assistance loan/grant program guidelines for the 18-CDBG-12898 grant by title only.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There are no outside meetings, so number 12, going to future agenda items. Yes.
I have one agenda I'd like to put on the future agenda item list. I, upon reflection, noticed that we had passed salary increases for all employees relative to a strategy of bringing up to parity with weed, except we did not address one employee, which is our city manager, who is not at parity with weed or anywhere nearabouts. And I just wanted to see if the council has an appetite to at least discuss that relative to, from my perspective, remedying that.
Okay, so I'll second that future agenda item.
Any others before I go through the long list?
Before we go through that, who was his pick to win the Super Bowl? I was just saying, before we talk about money for the city manager, who is his pick to win the Super Bowl? If it's not the Niners, I'm not sure we can agree to that.
All right, so a possible item, if people are interested here on the council, would it behoove us to put a moratorium on new bed and breakfast licenses until that code is updated?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, so there you go. So that would be the February 13th meeting?
Yeah.
But that's to put the moratorium on, because I don't think the code will be updated for a few months, right?
I've got a very rough draft of a urgency ordinance for bed and breakfast. That, yeah, we can get it by the 13th. And
the new ordinance or
the moratorium? And I'm thinking, I've got to look at it closer. I don't think we need a new ordinance. I think what we'll end up doing is amending this ordinance to include, it seems like a roundabout way to do it, but, you know, given the way figuring out through this iterative process what counts as a short-term rental, I think it might be best to actually, once this short-term rental ordinance is adopted, amend it so it also includes bed and breakfast. It'd probably be the easiest way to go. But the next step is to get a moratorium in place to buy us time.
Conversationally, so you would simply tag on the bed and breakfast code to the end of the short-term rental code, because there's specific items that pertain to bed and breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, what I foresee, and I need to go through it, is adding a specific definition for bed and breakfast, listing that number, and if the goal of council is to cap bed and breakfast at the current number, that certainly can be written into the existing ordinance as an amendment.
So adopt urgency ordinance first. Then adopt the existing short-term rental ordinance and then amend in that order, correct?
That sounds good to me.
I have been out mingling with a bunch of business owners, especially on Mount Shasta Boulevard these last few weeks, and everyone is asking, when will we know what we can do as far as dining out into the street? So I think we need to bring that ordinance up sooner than later in regards to the parklets that are currently out in front of Pipeline and Sparky's, and seeing if we can have a more uniform option for all dining on the boulevard.
So I have 3 solid sample outdoor dining ordinances. I need to go through and figure out the one that fits us best, is most streamlined, and make those changes. But it's on my to-do list. I'm gonna try to get through them this week.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so in that regard, we want to make, so it's not on there as a
No.
future agenda item, so should we make it a future
Yeah.
agenda item? So that would be
A near-term agenda item for the outdoor dining.
outdoor dining, extended sidewalks, et cetera.
It would be in the ordinance for the criteria for putting them out, and because we have a resolution, but I don't think we have an ordinance.
Correct.
And
Well, yeah, and what we do have currently is that COVID,
right.
yeah, the temporary COVID one that we would need to.
So we're looking to develop an ordinance that clarifies outdoor dining
criteria, yes.
Restrictions,
Right.
et cetera,
Guidelines, all that.
and guidelines
Procedures.
which we don't clearly have now. We have it.
Yeah, we need
temporary.
to codify it in an ordinance, and part of and there are a lot of people that are interested in this. One specifically is Theory Coffee Roasters, that has an agreement to go into the commercial space at the Summit Lofts, and part of their desired model is for outdoor seating. So, just if we're welcoming in a really successful business from out of town, and this is part of their model, I want to see what we can do to meet their needs.
I would say at a minimum, continuing the conversation, there are 3 new potential outdoor dining applicants, and then, of course, there are 2 already exist. By outdoor dining, meaning they move into the street and take parking spaces. A lot of our businesses already have outdoor dining, but it's adjacent to their properties, so it works quite easily.
I think I hear general consensus to put that on near term.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that the near-term part of this is they need to know if they're going to try and get ready for the summer.
Yes, that was the urgency I was hearing.
Their urgency.
They want
that
spring, yeah.
They're going to need some lead time.
Yeah. Do we need me to read every item on this list? For semantics? No?
No.
Okay. Any other future agenda items to add? All right, we are adjourned.